Hi, this is Gary with Aldan American, and I want to show you this coilover kit we're doing for the C10 truck. And the reason we're doing this is Eric is a former employee of ours, and we've been talking back and forth with him since he worked for us. And one of the problems is the truck's a little bit worn out. It's a project truck he's been working on for a few years, and the front suspension definitely needed some help. It already has drop springs and drop spindles in it, but he said it just wasn't what he wanted. Now, the wheel and tire that's on here is something that he likes. It's a 20-inch wheel, but he's also thinking about doing some more changes with the wheel and tire combination. As he says, he's a little bit tired with it, so we want to get the suspension dialed in and set up for him so that he can choose the wheel and tires exactly how he wants it to sit. We're going to do the coilover setup in the front. It has a dedicated lower control arm for a coilover mount. We do have to change the upper brackets on the frame so that we have the upper shock mount, and we include this template. And so I'm going to show you how I use the template in a 4-inch hole saw to cut the hole for the shock to go through on the crossmember. Included is also all the grade 8 hardware. And this kit we're using today is using the SPC upper control arm along with the Performance Online lower control arm. So this control arm is unique because it has a taller ball joint which improves your roll center, and also your camber and your caster is going to be adjusted using the threaded sleeves in order to move your ball joint around to get your camber and your caster exactly where you want them to be. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this setup is the lower control arm has improved geometry, so it has a little bit more caster built into the lower control arm as well as the upper control arm. We're using a double adjustable shock, and on this particular truck we want to get it as low as possible. So what I've done is I've custom built it, and all you have to do is give us a call and we can discuss anything custom changes that we want to do to suit your build. But it's a shorter 12-inch double adjustable shock, and that is the shortest shock we can put on the front and have sufficient travel to make the truck drivable. Now, this kit is designed so that you can lower it about 2 to 3 inches with the shorter shock from stock, and then when we add the 2.5 or 3-inch drop spindle in the front, that's going to get your front end dialed as low as you can get it to go for that really, really cool look and awesome handling. Normally we'd be also doing our shocks in the rear, but this truck has air shocks in it. He does occasionally carry stuff in the truck, and he wanted to stay with the air shocks so that he could put some air in it and be able to carry a load. Even though he's going to stay with the air shocks, I'm going to show you measurements and what we're looking at to choose the right shock for the rear of your C10. So follow along, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to install this kit. So the first thing we want to do is we want to measure our ride height. What I usually do is I go through the center line of the wheel to the wheel well lip, and that will be our measurement. And what I want to do is record all 4 corners before we take anything apart, and that way we'll know if the truck started off level and flat or if it's a little bit crooked. A lot of vehicles are not level to start with, and when you lower them, it'll show up more so than it did before. And that will also give us an idea of how much we've dropped it. And if we can level the car up with the coilovers, that's one of the advantages of having a coilover shock. So because of the fuel lines, the brake lines, and everything else that's inside the frame, I just really cannot get to this bolt to take it out. So I'm just gonna take and plasma cut it. But if you've got a truck that doesn't have a lot of stuff going down the frame, such as fuel lines, brake lines, it's easy to get to the bolt, but I just can't get to it today without taking it further apart. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this template, and so what this template is designed to do, we include some inexpensive, cheap silver washers. I want to stack enough washers underneath it so the teeth of my hole saw are going to be below the template, and that way the template's going to hold the hole saw to make a nice clean cut in the top of the cross member. On the top of the cross member, depending on how deep the pressing and stamping was when they did the upper spring seat, what I have to do is grind it flat so my bracket sits flat on the cross member. Look at that. Perfect. As you can see, we've now installed the upper control arm bracket. It is a little bit difficult to install. This truck had headers. There's also the original fuel lines that go down the side, the brake lines, everything that's inside the frame. So it is difficult to get in there. It is difficult to get everything apart and together. That's probably the most difficult part of this entire process. If your truck doesn't have headers or the engine's out, it's a piece of cake. So one of the questions I always run into when I'm doing upper control arms, if they're not marked left and right, is figuring out which one is left and right. So if you look at this A-arm, this is our right-hand A-arm, and as you can see, the ball joint is on a plane like this. So this arm here is also on the same plane, so that's going to tell me that this is the right A-arm. And as you can see on my left A-arm, it's going up and down, so it's the opposite of this. So we're going to do the Delrin upgrade. So the original bushing that comes in the upper control arm is the rubber bushing. So with our Delrin bushing, what I'm going to do is change out the entire bushing assembly. The SPC kit came with these steel spacers. I'm going to put them on, and I won't know until I'm ready to align it and setting everything up if they're necessary or not. But I'm assuming because they came with the kit, they are necessary. So on our front control arms, the easiest way of telling the left from the right is the sway bar mount will go in the front. The second thing we need to do is make sure that this little divot here that's drilled into the cross shaft is going to fit into a pin that's in the saddle for the U-bolts. We want to make sure to align this hole and this pin right here in the saddle so everything stays aligned right where it's supposed to be. So we're now ready to install our coilover shock. So this is our double adjustable, so it has a compression knob on the bottom, a rebound knob on the top. And because this is a front and because I kind of have an idea, what I like to do is go full counterclockwise, 1, 2, 3, and so that's the fourth position, and that's where I like to start with on my rebound. On my compression side, I like to leave it at the number 1 position. It's just a great place to start. Put my bolt through the top. Because I know we're setting this truck up to go as low as it can go, I'm going to use the bolt hole closest to the ball joint. That will place it at its lowest point. If you go inboard a little bit, there's 3 bolt holes. So the most inboard will be the highest setting that you can put between these 3 holes. So we're now going to install our front sway bar onto this C10 truck. So the first thing we're going to have to do is remove this drop-down bracket that holds the bushings. And the new Performance Online sway bar does not use this bracket. There's a couple of different ways you can remove the rivets. I've installed the Performance Online sway bar, and as you can see, the end link mounts to the tubular control arm lower bracket, and then it uses the front bolt hole from your drop-down bracket for the stock style sway bar. Now, whether your frame had a sway bar or not, you may have to drill this hole. I like to set everything up so I can get an idea and a visual of how everything goes before I start drilling this additional hole, because the back hole is not on the frame from the factory. Now, I'm not going to drill the holes yet because I haven't done the left side of the car yet, but one of the other additions on this Performance Online sway bar is it includes these brackets, and you can take the brackets, drill the lower control arm, bolt these on, and then your end links will work with this style sway bar. One of the advantages to this sway bar is the sway bar tucks up nice and close to the frame, so there's less chance of it hitting the ground. Now, anytime we're working with lowered trucks, I always tell customers, measure your shocks at ride height so we can get a good idea of what length shock you actually need. Just saying the truck is lowered doesn't do us any good, because like in this case, you can see it has a shock extension. Here's the original bolt hole for the shock. So what has already been installed is the shock extension, so it lowers the shock pickup point so that you can regain the travel you lose when you lower the truck. So in this case, the truck has got a flip kit in it, so the axle has been taken from the bottom side of the leaf springs to the top side of the leaf spring, which then makes the shock really short, and also the angle gets a little bit odd because it starts, as it goes up, your angle is going to start flattening out. By doing the shock extension, it's going to put the shock in a better location. So when we're talking about at ride height, I always want to do it with the truck or the vehicle sitting on the ground exactly how it's going to see the road. Now in this case, it's a leaf spring axle. We can use axle stands to support the rear axle and then in turn let the jack down, and that's going to give us a very good indication of at ride height. In this case, we're doing full axle droop because it's a little bit easier on the lift, and I just really want to show you the principle of what we're trying to accomplish. In this case, we're at 18 3/4 of an inch at full extension. I hope you can see how I installed this kit and apply it to your own project. And as you can see, that upper bracket to the frame is a little bit difficult to get to, and I've said that a couple of times, but that is the most difficult part of this installation. Everything else is just simple R&R, remove, replace, torque it to spec. All of the 3/8 hardware is going to be 35 foot-pounds. The 7/16 bolts that go to the frame rails, you're going to put that at 40 foot-pounds. And then the shock bolts themselves, I usually just go to 70 foot-pounds, even though it's a 5/8 bolt. Doesn't need to be any tighter than that. So with the SPC upper control arms, the Performance Online lower control arms, the Performance Online sway bar, the Aldan American double adjustable shocks, Eric's going to have a fantastic truck to drive. It's going to sit right with awesome handling. For more information about Aldan American products, check us out at aldanamerican.com.